Welcome back to Pause, Rewind and Play, talking about TV technology. And today we're going to be talking about sports and real-time data. And to do that, I need an expert. Luckily, I found one. That's good. Chris, how are you doing?
Hello. How are you? That was not how I was billed as.
Chris, the expert? Oh, you definitely are the expert.
I'll take it.
No, I mean, look, we know each other fairly well. We're friends. We've worked together. And I'm very lucky in that you run a company that focuses on things like streaming infrastructure, which we've talked about, but also sports. You'd be very heavily focused on the data that flows into sports. But do you want to just tell us a little bit about background and experience, just to give the viewers some sense of that?
Yeah, so I'm 25 years into OTT, media digital publishing, building very large scalable streaming platforms, distribution, ecosystems. And obviously the world is heavily sports focused, right? Which is now a big part of that. So yeah, we sports data, how you distribute sports data at scale, enrich it is very much kind of in our domain now a little bit.
And the data's, I mean, well, before we dive into that, just about to kind of segue immediately into the fact about real time data, but you are our series sponsor. It's worth calling out. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
But yeah, let's get to it. So that data part is important and has always been important. Like, you have always seen as a viewer data that's associated with sports. However, the real-time nature of data, as it has been in maybe the last handful of years, that's the thing that we're going to talk about today. And I think there are some specific use cases, some specific requirements, challenges, needs, things that have to be solved for in relation to that specifically, right? Because you may have seen, for an example, right, you may have seen an on-screen graphic that tells you the order in which the series of athletes came in a race, right? But that data is shown after the fact at the end, once the race is finished. Now we're in a domain where all of the sorts of data, like, for example, the amount of pressure that they put through the blocks on the starting line, maybe things like even heart rate and acceleration and all of that the stuff that is real time, that in its nature that's happening, that is what is becoming available.
Yeah.
And it's going to evolve and change the sports experience in quite a meaningful way. So I'm quite excited about this, because I think whereas I experience it and have many views on it, you're doing it actually at scale with that data, right?
Yeah, there is a lot of places that this can go, right? If we try to digest down or dilute down what sports data is, there's a few different answers, right? At its lowest level, we bucket it into static and dynamic data, right? So static data being things like, event schedules, makeups of teams, that kind of stuff. And then dynamic data being stuff that is very much real time. So that is your key moment information. So your play-by-play or your tracking data. Can also be, like you say, biometric data for heart rate and other bits. And then with that data, depending on the audience, different people and different audiences are doing different things with it, right? If I'm a fan, I'm consuming it. There is a consumption part of that. If I am an operator, I could be automating from it, right? I could be using that data to key off stuff, right? Sure. So if I'm televisuals and I want to do a sponsor ad or a nice segue into a pre-roll or something similar, I'm keying off that. So there's like a sort of automation use case of that too. And then following it sort of further back is what how do we get that data, right? So what does the aggregation ecosystem for it look like? And it's, maybe one of the things we'll kind of talk about is I think some of the variation of how all of that data collection ecosystem works. And I think you're right. There is more and more data becoming available, and the challenge is like, how do we harness it? How do we aggregate? How do we do it at scale? And how do we keep the performance and the real time nature of it? But I think what is common is that real time appetite for data, right? And it's got to be accurate, not second accuracy, millisecond accuracy. Right?
Wow. Okay. And those two lenses, groups, whatever you want to call them, of kind of technical back-end data and consumer-facing data, are they in some way mutually exclusive, or is there quite a lot of crossover in those as well? Do you see?
There's a lot of crossover. Yeah, I think that the two things can't easily exist independently. A lot of it is just down to the way that the data ecosystem is built. But that nature of real time and what people are doing with it is becoming more common, like, fan experiences, right? The statistical bit, how you present that to the consumers. How do we fuse that with data from balls, right? How can we take sensor data? How hard is a kick or a shot, the corner, and how do you start to present an enriched experience? I think we've done to death the sort of standard, like, oh, this person scored a goal, right? Like, this person did this. And now it's about, how do you monetize data? How do you take it forward? How do you do new things with it? And then how do you fuse it with new sources?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to get to quite a bit of that. And I think when I wrote down some of the kind of characteristics here, and we talk about being reliable, it being synchronized down to the millisecond level, and how that feeds into the fan experience. And one interesting one that you mentioned just as you're in the midst of that discussion before we started filming was even things like use cases like accessibility can depend on this. I think that's just a brilliant area to think about and focus on.
Yeah, how do you generate? And this is maybe that nice intersect with things like AI, right? Which is a bit of a buzzword right now. But how could I take?
You were going to throw it in there. So
it's going to come up, isn't it? Like, how could I take a sports data feed and turn it into a commentary, right? Like, and I think there are some great things, like you say, the accessibility, the visually impaired, the ability to take all of that data. We've seen scenarios of people who have got data rights but not video rights or content rights.
Okay.
Right. So could we use data and tracking and position data to generate a 3D animation of where things are going on a canvas using that data and tell a story without even having the video content that relates to it? And that's stuff like that's really cool,
Very, I mean, yeah, and immensely so. So what are your insights upon kind of a perspective on the current state then, in terms of give me a view or a lens on that? Because I think that there's certainly, it's probably fair to say, quite a chasm between maybe what you'd call tier one sports, they've got a globally recognized, well-known brands, and at the complete opposite end of the spectrum, grassroots. So what are your thoughts around that? Because I think there's a lot there that we could talk about. Maybe.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers in between there, and you could argue that it's very linear, but it's nowhere near, right? At that top level, the Premier League, the sort of the World Cup, rugbies, and the data's phenomenal. The collection ecosystem, big agreements.
And just to be clear, you've been around that stuff, so
and it's it's very well structured. It's very well done. And when you're operating in that space, and we're not complaining, that's the wrong word, but we're nickel and diming over little bits that we can tweak, right? Versus what happens further down. And I don't even mean right at the bottom. I mean, like, the 80% or that surface layer below the cream, what is the difference there? And even that's vast, right? If you are running just like a league somewhere out in Europe for a second sport that's not even football, a basketball, a handball, whatever, right? There is a big difference over the data, how it's aggregated, how it's pulled together, the quality of it, the reliability, and then further down the bottom, your Sunday league football, right? How are we getting data for that stuff? It's a dad at the side, or mom at the side of a pitch with an iPhone keying in stuff, and they're doing it best efforts. They're doing it manually, for the love of it, manually, right? And it's great and it's commendable, but then you're going to get the quality variation between all that. And I think there's a big piece over how do we enable people to build a data ecosystem and contribute to that data pool, and do it for more than just what people see on like Sunday football or Sunday rugby, where it is very prominent and it's all the major stuff that we see. But there are sports fans throughout all those layers that are not the stuff that's been shown on the mainstream media. That I think people are still really interested in.
Masses of sport that as this technology becomes democratized, first it becomes visible, as in it's available to watch, but then as a fast follower to that, you would hope and like to think that the likes of data, specifically real-time data, could come very quickly behind that as a kind of supporting tool. And that could lead to the kind of exposure of massive amounts of additional sports across the board, across regions and continents that doesn't get a visual voice today. But with this, as I said, with this democratization of technology that we're seeing, we could see all of that.
And there are people now starting to branch into that world. So Dine, for example, are doing an amazing job. I know we didn't try to talk about specifics, right? But they are doing a phenomenal job of this. And it's when we say it's not just the OTT platform or the distribution bit. It's the entire chain, right? They're caring and enabling these lower leagues to be able to produce content and produce data, and the tooling that's been built and put in place to allow them to go in and add team structure and league tables and ranking tables and upload player headshots and artwork and all that kind of stuff is contributing to that ecosystem. So now if I'm a lower league fan, I can almost get the same, if not a better experience as I can watching that versus my major kind of football league that I see on the TV on a Sunday afternoon, because that tooling, that self-enablement is becoming much more rich and capable, but it is still democratized. That's one example. There's not an industry standard way of doing this.
Yeah.
And then
that is a better than amazing segue into the challenges that we see, right? Because I think that idea that you could make that sport available and you can do it in a way that people can operate easily and efficiently and get it to a really, broad audience. It's amazing. That's an amazing thought. That doesn't come though without its challenges. Not just that area, but I mean challenges across the board with real-time data. So what are your thoughts about some of those challenges? Because I think this is an important area to cover as well. It's like this sounds great. I like it very much. Let's do that.
Yeah.
But what are some of the challenges that you come up against?
The standards problem is huge, right? There are none. There are no standards for the way that we manage sports data, and depending on who you go to get your sports data or how you do this, they all have their own ways of doing it, and that's fine. Like, it's a proprietary ecosystem, but again, as an operator, it pens very big challenges downstream with how you manage that, collect it, how you aggregate it, how you standardize it, putting business logic over the top of it, and being able to process all of that and still maintain that sort of single digit millisecond accuracy and latency is really, really hard. There is the abstraction challenge. If I am building applications for my consumers and I decide I'm going to change my data provider halfway through, what does that mean? Well, it means that unless there's any abstraction or you've got a good way of doing this at a platform level, those apps have to go and be rebuilt, reformatted. Even in some of the mainstream kind of sports and mainstream data, and through nobody's fault, the integrity of that data can waver. And it's just, at the end of the day, we don't have a fully automated data chain. There is still somewhere a big pink soft squidged object in the form of a human at the end keying something in.
To clarify.
Right. No, but that process still goes wrong at times through nobody's fault. It's just it can be a key press error. It can be somebody forgot something and they didn't associate something correctly. But then it just flows straight out, like, just a river flows straight out the other end. And before you know it, something for the consumer on their fan experience is broken.
Yeah. I love that point you made about processing versus augmentation, right? So can you process the data in real time? Maybe, possibly, probably.
Yeah.
But actually, in order to do meaningful things, you're talking about layering on that data to add value, right? That's the thing that we're trying to achieve here, is that data's got to have a purpose of some sort or another. And so it's not just can you process the flow, it is, and can you extract insights from it, and can you use that to trigger things, as you mentioned. Otherwise, there isn't any necessarily any inherent value to that data.
Hello! I hope you're enjoying the conversation in today's episode. I just wanted to take a moment to say a huge thank you to Spicy Mango, who are our Series 1 sponsor. If you're looking to build global scale media and digital publishing platforms, Spicy Mango bring that serious expertise. They dig deep, they look at your business goals, and they ensure technology actually does what it should do in order to drive growth and remain cost effective. You can get in touch with them at spicymango.co.uk. And with that, let's get back to the episode.
Data is different things to different people, and as a fan, like, audiences are very fickle, right? It has to work. It has to be fast isn't even the right word. It's going to be synchronized. It's going to be absolutely on point with the video. We're aware of like video latencies, encode latencies, distribution latencies. There's no point in having a a data visualization or a data ecosystem that's running seconds ahead of the video that's
Or behind,
it'd be higher. Like, so those two things have to work hand in hand, otherwise, and they're got to be on point together. Otherwise, it's kind of pointless for the fan.
And when it doesn't work, how do you think that challenges the user? Do you think that there is a scenario where, I mean, we talked a little bit about it, obviously there, but I'm thinking about things like, for example, where let's say you do the management of your real-time data really, really well. So you've got this wealth of data that you can then turn to visual insights, maybe you can use the power of advertising, whatever it might be. Is there a possibility to do too much, to overwhelm the user with it? Like, we've got all this richness of data now available to us. Let's put that there. Let's put this here. Let's put that there. And suddenly you've got, it's an experience that becomes overwhelming rather than enjoyable.
Massively, right? It's a 10% technologist problem and a 90% UI UX product problem, right? Because we can have data in abundance. If you can't find a way to make it usable, to not just overpower that viewing experience, sports are still lean back, right?
Sure.
I believe that there is a place where fans still want to get to, of having I call it a non-intrusive, but it's like an on-demand, it's on tap when they want it, right? A data experience overlaid onto the top of that content. That decision is made
extensively by editors. Like, at the moment, you get the data right, first of all, right? Be able to process the data, be able to augment it, add value on.
Yeah.
But then when you get to that point of layering on, those decisions are made at the moment heavily editorially.
Massively.
And
in band, in video.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, delivered as part of the video,
right?
Overlay graphics. What you're saying is it'd be nice to be able to choose.
Massively. Separate it out. Have all that stuff out of band, and there's no reason technically why we can't be doing all of this stuff, right? My ability to, have a beautifully crafted sponsorship ad or something similar. If I want to go back through a key moment timeline, be able to see some really nice discrete branding or run a pre-roll, be able to regionalize that data more. So as an operator now, to say, well, I only operate in the UK market and I do it all in English, that's such a ridiculously naive view, right? We're a very multicultural, country now, and the ability to present sports data out translated, right, in a way, and even support things like, right to left and not just left to right, text and presentation.
Yep.
All of that stuff is, easy is the wrong word. It is achievable. Like, it is achievable and it's doable. And I think we should be pushing the needle. I have a huge, like a lot of people now, like 50-inch TV, 16-inch TV, they're the standard in a lot of homes, right? Yeah. And to be able to have a really nice data presentation and still be able to watch a game or an event and to be able to browse, a list of players or statistics, I want to be able to do that when I want to do it. And that could be quite a nice thing.
There's the degree of personalization there, I think, but like almost like as an underlying concept, we have to mix data science and a bit of artistry, a bit of good decision, and maybe a bit of personalization there too. But look, and we're going to talk about innovations, but like in the last episode, before we do, should we have a biscuit break?
I'm down for that.
Right. So,
be staring at me.
This time we've got outrageously chocolatey biscuits.
Ooh.
These are M&S, but there are other biscuit manufacturers and vendors available. Of course there are.
Not in my house.
Okay. Right. What are you choosing today? What would you like?
I feel like I should go for the mainstay, but I'm going to go for the chocolate ring, the hybrid chocolate ring.
I was not expecting that.
I like a chunky biscuit, but
yeah, I mean, these are all chunky biscuits. I'm going to go, I think this is probably going to be orange flavour, so I'm going to have one of those just in a second. But whilst you're inhaling that biscuit,
that's pretty good.
Enjoy.
I might not stop at one.
No, definitely no. So whilst you're just having your biscuit, having your biscuit and eating it. So I will ask you a little bit about, or I will prompt up a discussion on innovation. So we would be hugely remiss if we didn't talk about, what I'm going to say next, right? AI.
Yeah.
Comes AI. Anyway, I've said it twice now. If we didn't talk about AI in this area and how it is maybe helping to power innovation, maybe taking us towards the next generation. I know you have some specific views on it though, and that is that, that there's a lot of noise in the commentary around it at the moment. And because of your background and your expertise and your experience, you can help us probably cut through a lot of that. Because I think one thing that is true to say is it's mentioned everywhere in everything at the moment. And it can almost be a bit of you kind of end up a little bit snowblind of like, well, where is it actually being used? What does it actually mean? So what's your take on AI, ML? It's where it are being used previously and how they might be used going forward. What's your view?
I got to be careful not to put a big target on my back in the industry, because
I don't think you will. I think by being real about it, it's
no, you're right.
No,
you're right. And I guess what I was going to say is I feel yesterday's ML is today's AI, right?
But we've had ML for a bit.
We've had ML for a bit, right?
And it's being used in back office or background services very effectively.
But the bit that AI is offering is that human interface layer.
Got it. Right.
Right. It is the ability to, when people think chatbot, they think AI.
Yep.
Right.
And the generative tools.
And the generative
AI,
tools, right? To produce conversation or conversational like contextual awareness. And it still gets it wrong at times, but it's good, right? It's
getting there, yeah.
It's getting there, and it's getting better. And I think layering AI over the top of the ML part and pulling out the insights and the predictions, in some of the work that we've been doing, it's very easy to see where AI goes wrong if you ask it to make a prediction. It's still not there versus using traditional machine learning models to produce the same outputs. So if you ask, a really good ML engine based on 10 years of historical data, let's take a particular event where there was a series of players that are consistent and, do something smart, right? Layer in the weather and then go, okay, like how did this event perform and how did this player perform in the wet versus the dry? Right? Like ML can do a much better job at giving you an answer that seems a little bit more realistic versus AI, where that hallucination and its ability to think it knows, it's not quite there yet. So like it's getting better. It's a great human interface, but I don't think it supersedes or makes the data science aspect underneath it null and void at this stage.
No, it's providing that ease of access.
Exactly.
That interface ease. No question. I mean, that's what I love about it, and I think it is democratizing and lowering the kind of the barrier to entry for so many more people to be able to take advantage of it. Like you say, you've still got to get the kind of quid pro quo, or the balance here is, but you've still got to get the correctness and the performance out of it.
You're right.
It's no good having access to something and being able to use it really easily if it doesn't give you not even expected answers. How do we
useful, relevant?
Yeah. Like relevant is a good
things that answers that make sense, right?
Yeah, it's a balance to be found, isn't it? And so if we think about it then from the other side of things, which is then with these innovations, where does the benefit come for the fans, right? The fan engagement tools.
Yeah.
What do you think about the sorts of outcomes that users can expect as a result of these innovations? I think there's actually quite an exciting seam or avenue to be explored here.
Yeah, I totally agree. The data is there, and we talked about data overload a bit and trying to fuse some more of these data sources together.
Yeah.
If I'm watching a game, we know now, we just, like it's almost a given, right? That the technology on the field and on the pitch and in these events or on the track or whatever is becoming really, really advanced, right? And it's made use of a lot in the broadcast domain quite well, either through commentary or feedback or what people are telling you on the data, but it's not leveraged in the digital domain yet, or the this sort of out of band thing, right? If I'm an OTT app and I've got a data overlay, I can't yet see how fast somebody kicked the ball or the angle or,
loads of POCs and demos of it. Interesting either.
I don't know any. Maybe I'm not hugely close to the global market for presenting this stuff, right? But there is still a long way to go into this becoming the mainstay and the mainstream. There are some really cool things that we can do with all that data, right? We did a live leaderboard concept a while ago, and it's clever, hooked into a mail distribution marketing platform, personalized. So there's a sort of, as a user, I say, who am I interested in, which team or which player or whatever, and I get an email and it's full of all that sports data and statistic. When I open up the email, I get the data at the time of open rather than at the time of send. So it's much more relevant, really clever, right? And that's the kind of thing you've got to be able to scale for. So there are some really cool things that we can do with data.
I think that there is a thing here, to paraphrase a popular song title of not so long ago that fans just want to have fun, like meaning that any kind of engagement you want to do with them has to feel like an enjoyable thing rather than a chore.
Yeah.
Right. It's got to add value for them. Right. You've got to have a reason to want to do it, but also I think sometimes it feels like it could be lost because if you take a very engineering centric view of things and you say, we're going to build this thing, functionally it's going to do this and it will be available to use in this way. Go, yeah, cool. I mean, it does what it says on the tin, and it's got real-time data powering it. So awesome. Is it fun though? Like, is there a kind of a way to pull the user into that? Don't know all the time, and I think you've got to have that element of fun for it to pull the user and make them engaged. Otherwise, what are we doing it for?
Yeah, agree. It's got to be done, I think, in the right place, in the right context. The big screen, the lean back experience that we know. Yeah. Putting quizzes and polls on there, I don't know if it necessarily works, and you'll get a very differing opinion in the industry depending on who you talk to. I think some people find it very good.
You've got to have a mind towards how this can be adopted and how broadly it can be adopted.
Yeah.
So let's think about it's an interesting area, but let's think about the future and do a bit of a kind of crystal ball gazing, if you will. What do you think real-time data within sports will give us kind of slightly further out? I have a view on this, but I'm quite keen to hear some of your thoughts as well.
I think the pattern analysis, right? The data analysis, pattern analysis, looking for where specific patterns exist, right? So I'm terrible because I'm not
You're terrible.
No, I'm terrible because I love what I do, from a technology perspective and a data perspective, but I'm not a massive sports fan, right, in that regard. I love a bit of motorsport, but I do it because I love just that innovation aspect. I love engineering something to be really the best that it could be and delivering that value, right, that value proposition for the consumer. Where is it going? Like, there is a lot of data on tap. So if you imagine football that run formations, I know this because I've had people tell me that footballers run formations, right? But
it's spoken like a true expert.
Apparently, yeah. Match of the day next. But those patterns are going to be synonymous across games, right? Like, how can we take the data and look for patterns in them or trends or differences or nuances? Like, it's the bit for the consumer, which is like, oh, here's an insight of something we found. Like the last time this team ran this formation, this was the result. I feel like there's a lot of clever stuff that we can do when we start crunching this data and not making it just passive. And when I say passive, like it's coming through for a live game, it gets processed for the live game, and then it's kind of out the door and gone.
It's a great point. I love it. And I think there's those sorts of things for that style of sport that you mentioned. Back to your love of motorsport. It's an area that produces tons and tons of very, very technical data.
Yeah.
So an augmented experience there. And I know when you spoke to me before, you said, well, if I could get from our motorsport, if I could get a personalized data stream, maybe like you discussed before, you've got the optionality as to where to toggle it on or off or how visible it is.
Yeah.
But more than that overlay, the augmentation that's done is personal to me. So I get a personalized feed, I get personalized data insights and overlays.
Yeah.
I think what you said was like, that would be interesting to me as a kind of premium experience.
It'd be great. And then the ecosystem around it, we still treat data a little bit like a value add. It's an overlay, it's there, we present some stats or some scores next to the player.
Yeah.
It is so easily doable to build an experience where as a consumer I can see my personalized feed for my driver or for my team, and then I can go back and watch clips, right, and link the media ecosystem and the video ecosystem into the data ecosystem and build that together. And it still doesn't really happen so much. We build experiences where I can see a rail or a page or a collection for a specific team, but I still don't think that integration is as good as it maybe could be at times. So I think the personalized feed is one thing. I think as an operator, you have to stop people picking up a phone in their hand, because if they do that, they're gone. You want to keep them in that experience. And I liken it to another video service providers are available, the YouTube rabbit warren. Like, you find a video, you watch something, oh, there's something else and something else and something else. And before you know it, you're 2 hours down watching stuff, right? Yep. That's what we should be getting to in our sports experiences, right? Whereas a user, I find a video and then I find something else and I find something else. And I don't think we do that today.
But I think that's the point about your personalization of the experience, is that, you know, there's many different ways to look at it from a live event perspective, but whether it's, you know, but alongside that, before it or after it, or maybe in parallel with it, however you end up doing it, but that personalization element, leveraging data and real-time data could be a tremendously powerful thing. And I think the kind of the quid pro quo there is that there is that's a premium service, at least initially, before it gets maybe broadly adopted.
Yeah, I think so. But again, it comes back to the UI, the UX, how we present it and make it available. You can't just vomit data onto a page. Users aren't going to find that useful. It's going to be baked into the experience.
I mean, it's such a great point, and it brings it back to the real, I think, the human element of all of this, because we have been ostensibly in some way talking about it in a very relatively technical sense, but you know, ultimately boils back down to people. I mean, so today we've gone talk about so much in such little time, and we've had biscuits bonus. But we talk, we talk about what some of this real-time data is for sports. We talked about challenges of delivering it. Talked a bit about innovation and futures. Is there a final kind of thought that you'd have to leave the viewers with to kind of wrap up with? Is there anything particularly? I know what you'd said to me previously, that your mantra in some respects, like, start with the user. If you want to get it right, start there and then work round.
Yeah, I think that's massive, right? There is another I think maybe direction it's heading around, monetization, right? And how do we monetize? Yeah, and this has been a big thing in OTT, right? We talked about the cost of operating platforms, and OTT's always been a bit of a loss leader, right? To your point, what is a premium experience, right? Can we charge for some of that premium experience? Can we do more with the data? And I believe we can. Yeah. So
start with the user.
There is. Think of the way that we want to use sports experiences, right? I think moving a lot of our sports data in-band to out-of-band and doing something a bit different with it at the video level, at the player level, rather than just a table or a league, a schedule of events or a player card. I think we can probably do some smart things with that data when it's really integrated into video experience.
Well, look, thank you, Chris. I mean, that has been epic. We've covered a good amount of ground, I think, on sports and real-time data. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. If you'd like to drop a like or even perhaps subscribe to the channel, absolutely, please do. And just when we're talking about all of these things that are TV and technology, sometimes it is good to pause, rewind, and play.